Welcome to HomeWord. I'm Jim Burns. You know, when my kids became teenagers, I thought it was going to be easy. I was a youth pastor. All of my adult life, I still consider myself a youth worker. I wrote my PhD dissertation in adolescence. So people were asking me to speak to kids. People were asking me to speak to their parents about teens. And my kids become teens. And Kathy and I were absolutely humbled. I mean, when I'm saying humbled, we were humbled. We actually thought we were kind of cool parents, and our kids didn't think we were cool parents. And to be honest, it was kind of shocking because I honestly thought this was going to be a breeze. Now, I love the teen years, and I had a good experience with the teen years, but I had to relearn a language to communicate with my kids because it was a different thing. I mean, they had been children, and in the children years, they have a role. They know that they're children. And in the adult years, they sort of have a role and they know what they're doing. But in the teen years, it's kind of a phase and they're just passing through. And so we're going to help you a lot today. And I'm so honored to have Paige Klingenpill with me today. Her podcast is called Embracing Your Season, Parenting the Littles and Understanding Teens. And you know what? It's my favorite parenting podcast on the planet. And I never said that before because you've never heard me say that, but I honestly mean it. I love Paige. I love what she does. She has a great background. She's a teen therapist as well as other things. We'll talk about that in a moment. But also her likability factor is just off the charts. Paige is married. She has 4 kids. 3 of them are teens, so she's living the dream, and then 1 is a preteen, so that's also the dream. She's living the dream. She's married to a wonderful husband. She is on staff at Pine Hills Church in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and her podcast is the sister podcast to this podcast. So if I said I like her parenting podcast the most, that means I'm second, or maybe third or fourth, but I sure love her stuff. Today we're talking about healthy communication with your teen and preteen. Paige, it's great to see you.
I am so excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Jim.
I actually listen to you every week. I mean, you know this because I kind of respond to you, but I listen to you every week, or sometimes I watch you on the HomeWord YouTube channel, and I love your program.
Oh, thank you so much. I have so much fun doing it, truly. Yeah. Like, I learn, I grow, I gain information because the people I talk to, it's like, teach me as well, so we're always growing.
Well, that's the neat thing where you're going to teach us today because really, I don't know anybody who's ever said in the world who said, parenting a teen or communicating with a teen is like super simple. It's not all super dramatic. I mean, sometimes we had our degree of teen communication. So there's great times as well. But I'm so happy that we can talk about it. Now, you have been this amazing teen therapist for a number of years now. You've heard everything. But did you have the surprise like I had when my kids became teens?
Yeah, it's so funny because you talk about how teenage adolescence could be simple. Well, it did come to me very easily to get kids to communicate. So I felt like I had this thing down, that when my kids become teenagers, they're going to talk to me about everything. We're going to have fun together. They're never going to push back on limits and boundaries. And then all of a sudden, I have teenagers, and I was like, who is this child I am living with? This is not who this person was even just 2 years ago. So it was quite shocking. But what I love is that we're navigating it together. It's that whole mentality of like, I am growing as a parent while I am parenting. And so it's just been a fun season. So far, it's my favorite. I mean, I haven't gotten to the adult children season, but I know there is a book out there about living life with your adult children that I know is really solid. So I'll pick that up when they get that age. But right now, this is fun. I mean, it's not always easy, but it's definitely fun.
Yeah, no, and you're right. I mean, you can be frustrated with a teen 24/7, 365. And again, part of that is because they're pushing the limits. That's what they're supposed to do. It's in their job description. They're sometimes going through experimental behavior, and they really are moving from dependence on their parents to independence, and yet they're not totally independent yet. The adult children, so like my kids, I mean, I'm now a mentor to them, but I'm not parenting them day to day because they're adult kids, right? It's funny, I'm not sure they would want me to call them kids, but that's what they are. One teenager said to me, teenager, I think she was about 16. And she said, when I was 7, my parents said, go to your room. And then when I am now a teenager, they go, come out of your room.
Right?
And she goes, it's really confusing, with my parents because of that. What advice would you give to a parent who is really going through that difficult time where it shocked them. Maybe it did a little bit like you. I mean, you're able to communicate so well with kids, but at the same time with our kids, it can be shocking. But the ones who are like, I had no idea, and it's not going well. What advice would you give to them to connect and communicate on a different level?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. First, let's just encourage you that this is just the season they're in. So it's not completely abnormal. I think for parents, we become fearful, don't we? Especially when it's a counter behavior. I look at my son, he was such a talker even just a year ago. And now he's spending more time like online with his friends. So that's his social community, but it's in his bedroom. So I'm not hearing the same stories I used to hear. And even though I have this background, I started thinking, is this a problem? No, I reminded myself, I compared notes with other parents in the same season. That's helpful.
Right.
But so those out there, just know this is part of normal development.
Yeah.
Of course, you know your kid best. So if it is becoming abnormal, definitely reach out to people that are in the season or experts so they can speak into that. But secondly, I would only say that when they finally do talk, so again, let's talk about my son. When he does talk to me, it's usually about Minecraft or this new game. I don't even know the name. I'll be honest. I'm not the best listener with this, but it's usually in the car ride. We're on our way home or to some sporting event. And he's finally telling me every detail. Right. Jim, I literally do not care about Minecraft. Like no part of me is interested in this. Right. However, I know that this is building equity with my kiddo. And so I'm asking questions. So now I know more about this creative mode than the whatever mode, right? Because this teaches my kid that I'm interested in what he's interested in. That's going to build a foundation later on when he's ready to tell me the harder things, maybe the more difficult, uncomfortable things, that I'm there and I'm going to be willing to listen.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're sacrificing your Minecraft
my brain cells about
we have to do that. I agree. And there are times when I would go out, and I'm going to talk about this at the very end, but there are times when I would go out on what we called a date with my kids. I had all girls. And honestly, we're talking about snowboarding or something that was, I had an agenda. I wanted to talk about their homework. I wanted to talk about their relationship with boys, their relationship with God. And I had to listen the whole time to that. But I love that you use the word equity, because sometimes we just simply have to do life with them. So in order to be that safe person when they're ready to talk.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so key. I heard you say something really interesting some time ago. You said, and I don't know that I did this very well with my kids when they were teens, but you said, ask your kids if you're how's the best way to talk to you about when you're freaking out about homework, or when your attitude stinks, or when things just aren't going well, or whatever. You ask them, how do you want me to be engaged with you? That's an incredible communication. Does it work?
Yes, actually, yeah. So I had to learn this the hard way. So of course, I'm going to parent from what I think is best for me in receiving information and how I want to be talked to. That's not my kids. Like you said, I have 4 kids. They each have different personalities. And so what I have found is when they're no longer heightened, so it's not the same situation, they're not panicking, freaking out, we go back and say, hey, I know next time I could probably do this better. Do you want me to ask you questions? Do you want me to encourage you? Yeah. How do you want me to talk to you? So it's twofold. I get to show them that I'm interested in walking alongside them in a healthy way, but then I'm also addressing the needs that they want addressed, right? Yeah. So now they're part of the solution. Instead of us as parents just being the dictator over communication, we're inviting our kids to have that communication with us. What works best for us? So now they're actually expressing needs. That's a life lesson.
No,
they're
that's
going to
really
be able
good.
to connect with other people as well.
What I hear you saying is, don't do it in the heat of the battle.
Yep.
Kind of pause. And so give us an illustration. So, I mean, I think parents are going, wow, that's really good. Mm-hmm. I don't even know how to do that. So give us a real live Paige Klingenpill illustration on, how you did that and how you navigated that with one of your kids.
This is actually this week. Again, I'll talk about my son. So he did not make good choices in school this week. So he didn't turn in a few assignments. And so we took away his privileges for his phone. That's just a result. We talked about it prior to. Well, that set him off. He was very frustrated. He felt like it was not appropriate. And so he pushed back a little bit. And so I initially started engaging with him, like arguing almost with him. But then I shut that down. You can't engage when your child isn't at the level. So all I said was, we'll just talk about this later. So he went to his room, slammed the door, did the whole thing. Later, I came back and I said, kiddo, what could I have said that helped you understand that not only was this a consequence, but it was actually a helpful thing for you so that you can do your job, which I believe school is their main employment, quote unquote, job right now. And he even said, he goes, Mom, I think it would have been better if when I got home, instead of talking about it right then, that we would have waited. I was like, okay, I could do that. I can wait then. When would have been a good time to talk about it? Well, how about we talk about it at dinner instead, when we're just kind of, I have 3 hours past school time. I can just sit and chill for a few minutes and then we talk about it. I think I would have responded better. And then I even asked, I was like, so how could I have brought it up to you? He goes, well, instead of telling me right away, you're going to take away my device. Instead, ask me, like, what happened at school? You know, like, why did you not turn in the assignments? I was like, okay, you're right. I can do that next time. So see how I was even just prompting him and then he was able to speak into that. And that creates a unity, a teamwork.
Yeah, I mean, and your son is amazing, by the way.
Honestly.
I mean, he led you through that perfectly.
He did. He's had
so some practice,
good.
you know, nothing
I think
like
he has good parents. Well,
no, that's it. I was just going to say nothing like having, you know, a mom who's a teen therapist. You know, I think one of my kids would have like put their, you can see this on the HomeWord YouTube channel. You can't see it when you're just on the podcast, but you know, I'm putting my hands in my ears going, and I would have said, no, I don't want to, never talk to me about this, you know, whatever. And sometimes that does happen. Sometimes you know, like your communication on that one was like A+ on his part and on your part, of course.
Well, and you know, I think the reason why is because we've continued to practice this.
Yeah.
So if it was one thing, if I said, okay, tell me how to talk to you next time, and then I didn't do that, that would have lost trust completely. But he knew that he had the ability to speak into this, and I was going to listen and respect that.
Yeah, no, that's really good. You know, something I probably say this on every podcast. So our producer Mike Segovia is probably getting sick of hearing it. But you know, communication is a learned trait, and it's a learned trait with our kids. Our kids don't know how to communicate. We don't know how to communicate. We don't know how to communicate with our teens. So it's a learned trait. That's good news. We don't have to communicate like our parents did necessarily. We don't have to communicate how our kids are communicating to us. So it's kind of this learning experience together, and it works if you practice and practice and practice. Yeah, and then you know, I mean, what you just said is actually perfect for marriage too. Yeah. You know, a lot of times when the teen years, I found for Kathy and me, we loved the teen years because we both had youth ministry background. It was great, but we found it very difficult on our marriage because they were pushing buttons and they were up later at night or they were gone and we're having a disagreement. She wants me to call, you know, at 9:50 because the limit is 10 when they could come in, and I go, no, I'm going to wait till 10, and she's going, no, you need to know right now. I mean, we don't know where they are. We haven't heard, you know, whatever. And I'm not saying that is even bad with her, but it was we need to learn how to have those kind of conversations.
Absolutely.
And it actually, even in marriage, I mean, it's just a good thought. When I heard you say that, you know, before, I went, wow, why not ask them? How would you like it? It's really, really, really good. I mean, man, amazing. Now, I mentioned that teens are in transition, and that's a big thing for me. In a book I wrote called Understanding Your Teen, I talk a lot about transition and identity. And so they're moving from childhood to adulthood, like I said. And one of the biggest parts of that phase is identity. So when you read teen books or understanding teen type books, you know, they always talk about identity. Eric Erickson, who was the, you know, guy who wrote so much about teens, he said the primary task of the teen years is to construct an identity. And so I think for some parents, I'm like, wow, I mean, they're into rap today and now they don't like rap and they're into some other kind of music. Now that now they're wearing all black and now they're wearing flowers. I'm on the HomeWord YouTube channel wearing my favorite Hawaiian shirt.
Nice.
But the point that I'm saying is that, you know, I think it's hard because how do we help them find this identity that's one, and I would hope it's as Christ followers, you and me, you know, that's rooted in Christ. But, you know, I mean, you're living with kids who are trying to figure this identity issue out. So they came to you. They're talking to you. And again, you're going to have certain kind of teens talking to you, but you know they're trying to find their identity. How do we as a parent help them understand that?
Yeah, I think one of the first things that we can do is just respect their unique identity, their opinions. Yeah. I think it's so easy to dismiss kids as if because they don't have the same experience or longevity like parents and adults do, that they don't know what they're talking about. When we do that, that actually shuts them down and it makes them first not want to communicate to us. But secondly, now we're not even going to get to see a side of their personality that could be developed if we showed them, wow, that's interesting, develop that more, right? So this is a perfect example of this was yesterday. I was so impressed. I was like, dang, y'all, I'm doing a really good job with this parenting thing. My
Wait
daughter,
till tomorrow.
oh gosh, yeah, that's next podcast. Let's talk about about how Paige failed in every single way. Yeah, agreed. Okay, so yesterday, my daughter, she's a sophomore. She got in the car. We were going to an orthodontic appointment, and she goes, Mom, did you know about this genocide in Rwanda? Did you know about the Native Americans and how, the people did this and this? And she starts going into this litany of history that she was so shocked to find out about. And I thought, wow, listen to her speak into this. She's passionate about this. She's all about social justice. And I had the opportunity to be like, well, you don't actually know what you're talking about. I could have shut this down. But instead, I said, tell me more about that. Wow, why do you think the government responded this way? Or tell me more about why that fires you up. Or what can you do to be the next generation to make sure that doesn't happen again? So now I valued and validated her opinions and made her feel like we were having a mutual conversation where her opinion mattered. And that creates a sense of autonomy, right?
No, it's really
and that
good.
increases self-esteem, because too often today's kids, they don't feel like they have a voice. And when they don't have a voice, they're definitely not going to come to us parents who shut them down. So that one little step of saying, what's your opinion on this? I love to start with what's in culture. So maybe it's a music or it's a video or it's a TikTok. Just even asking their opinion of, why do you think they're doing this? Or what does this song mean? Or why do you think culture really loves this character or this person? Now you're inviting them to not only share their opinion, but you're getting a glimpse into what culture is all about. So they'll come back and talk about that stuff. How cool is that?
No, that's really good. I was speaking this last weekend in Wisconsin, and I was doing one of HomeWord's seminars on building morals and values. And I said, the way you learn culture is to ask your kids, what's the latest, greatest music? What are you watching on TikTok? But actually, you're learning about them, but also you can even make it non-personal. They'll be more open sometimes about it. What's going on at the school? What do they think about, and fill in the blank. And a guy came up to me afterwards and he said, that's good. I had an experience like that. And I asked my son about, they want to talk about gender identity. And the son said, well, here's what I'm learning. Here's what's going on at the school and all that. And then I told my son he was a complete idiot and that he was wrong. And I pulled out my Bible and whatever. And I kind of went, wait, you flunked right there. I mean, he has every right to have a different opinion than his son, obviously.
Yes.
But you don't have this incredible conversation and then just go, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And he actually called his son an idiot. And I'm like, I think actually you're the idiot on that one. And again, I might have agreed on many of the the things that this man thought about. He just handled it so wrong.
That's right.
Through this whole conversation, I hear us thinking about as communicating with our teens is listening is the language of love. And you showed love by listening to your daughter with stuff that you may like or may not like. I mean, it's your Minecraft illustration. You may like or not like. But when you listen, you're saying, I love you. And that's a really good thing.
Yeah, that's good.
I wanted to ask you another question. This just kind of comes from parent after parent and me doing this too. But how important is it for a parent to apologize to their child as a communication? Like, you know what? I remember a time with Christy, I said, Christy, that was all about me and that was not about you. I kind of yelled at her. And I'm not a yeller. My dad was a yeller. I was much more the stuffer. But in this case, I kind of went, and rightly, she had kind of talked back to me or whatever it was, but it triggered me. And I said, I am so sorry. And she goes, oh, Daddy, I forgive you. And it was kind of this weird opposite that my kid is saying that to me. Was that a good thing or did I look weak?
Oh, gosh. I love when parents and adults apologize to their kids because we are so fallible. I mean, I was joking about how awesome of a parent I am. I fail every single day. But here's what I do differently than my own family of origin does is that I admit that I made a mistake, that I did not talk kindly, that I did not affirm them. Whatever my mistake was, I own that. And so not only does that model for our kids how to have that conflict resolution, but again, it's back to that value. Your feelings, your relationship means so much to me that I want you to know that it was violated and you should never be treated that way. And I'm so sorry. So please forgive me for, and then I go into that. And there's something so powerful about that because it's beyond just transactionary, right? Like it doesn't just fix the relationship. Instead, it's building back that trust. It's building that equity, that sense of intimacy in the relationship with my kids. And it's so powerful because how often do we feel like we're always in the right? And if we admit mistakes, we're weak. I'm sorry, that is an ignorant attitude that distorts relationships. And the seeds planted.
Well, and I love that you use the word transaction. And we do that with certain, I go to the store and I am having a transactional conversation or whatever it might be. Starbucks, I'm making an order, whatever. But with our kids, it's not transactional. It really is more, it's relational. And that takes more work, but it's still,
Absolutely.
it's just beautiful. Listen, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We're talking with Paige Klingenpill. Her podcast, I mentioned it. It's my favorite parenting podcast. It's called Embracing Your Season, Parenting the Littles and Understanding Teens. And if you haven't listened to it, or if you have not watched it on the HomeWord YouTube channel, then you're missing out. So I'm challenging you to take a look at this. And of course, you can find much more with Paige and her ministry at pageklingenpill.com. Don't worry if you can't spell that last name that she inherited when she married her husband.
That's right. It's my husband.
If you can't spell it, all the information is on our show notes on the podcast page. And I actually think I just used the word podcast page, and then now I'm using her name, Paige. When we come back, I want you to talk about your page is spelled differently, by the way, Paige. But anyway, I want you I want to talk about what do we do with troubled teens. I mean, you're a therapist, so parents, have teens who truly are troubled, and I'm talking about all kinds of issues, from anything from anxiety and depression, which is way up, sexuality. Gender issues, just tons and tons of things. And I want to talk about that, and I want to ask you some questions. I'm going to have you play therapist for us. And we'll be right back. Don't go away. And here's a little ad about HomeWord.
Hey, I'm Kelly Fellows. Did you know that HomeWord also has resources for parents and married couples? You can find all those resources at our website, homeword.com. Also, check out our YouTube channel, where we create 1-minute video vitamins to encourage parents and to resource couples. Check those all out at YouTube/HomeWord, and also our website, homeword.com. Now let's get back to our podcast.
Welcome back. Paige Klingenpill is with us today, and we're talking about healthy communication with your teens and preteens. Paige, right before the break, I mentioned the troubled teens, and I just keep adding these things: bullying, cyberbullying, self-injury. So many parents don't understand that, or their kids are cutting themselves, self-injury, suicidal kids, anxiety, depression, all the rest. What do you say to a parent who's really going through this struggle? I mean, now we're not talking about normal adolescent issues. We're talking about, well, these may even be normal anymore, but really tough stuff. What do you say to that person when they come and say, help?
Yeah. Well, hopefully they're asking for help. I think that's one of the things that we do as parents is we want to keep it inside the home, that we feel shame when our kids struggle, especially when there's outward manifestation of certain disorders like depression, anxiety, and all of those things. I think that's the number one thing. Just don't isolate. Don't isolate yourself. Like there are people like me and resources like HomeWord that can truly walk alongside you. So don't do this alone. I think that would be the number one thing.
I think a lot of times, I say that all the time because I think a lot of times when you're teen, you're embarrassed that your teen is doing this. And so you don't want to, and you hope it goes away. You're kind of in denial.
Absolutely.
And yet really this is the time to reach out and grab a coffee with somebody who had the same thing. I was talking with a man and woman. Kathy and I went out to dinner last night with beautiful people who we know. And their son had really gone through teenage years stuff. And I said, what did you do? And they said, well, we actually knew somebody else whose son had gone through it. And so we got together with them and we kind of cried and laughed together. And we actually ended up laughing. Even it was in the midst of the trauma, but now they had there some people to kind of walk through this. But also counseling. The Bible is so clear when, if there's no counsel, the people fall in the multitude of counsel, there is safety. And so we want to make sure, I want to make sure that our listeners, the podcast watchers of YouTube, that they actually do understand that really is a key thing. So if somebody comes in and they say to you, my child is deeply depressed, what are you going to do? How are you going to communicate with that parent?
Yeah, gosh. And unfortunately, that is a common thing right now that we are
right
seeing
now
that in more and more. I think the first thing is, again, that there's hope. That they will not always be in this season of life, that it does get better. So I come around the parents, but I also come around the child. I think equipping the parents is the number one thing that we can do, especially as therapists. We can help the child. We can give them resources and tools, but we're not in the home. We're not with them all the time. And so just walking the parent through all the different resources they can have. Sometimes depression is truly a biochemical issue. So giving them a referral to doctor, getting them connected to a therapist so that we can help both the parent change their parenting style lifestyle, and the child can work on some of the thinking errors that is usually rooted with some depression features. But again, it's about a holistic approach.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking down to what is their sleep like? What is their diet like?
Right.
Many parents don't think about that holistically. That's the cool thing about having someone else in this field speak into it.
Right,
It's like
right. You know,
asking those questions.
right. I mean, I tell people all the time to go to people like you. Because you do this all the time, and so you know the patterns, you know the issues. But at least a parent should get an assessment. An assessment doesn't mean you're not going to. Parents will immediately go, "My child is troubled and this and that. Where can I send them?"
Oh yeah,
to go
fix
take
them.
care of it?
Yeah.
And I say no. First get an assessment, because this may not be as bad as you think. And honestly, it could be a physiological issue with many of these issues.
Yep.
It could be a psychological issue. It could be, all kinds of stuff going on. Maybe they need to go see a psychiatrist because of some kind of, something going on with their, with their brain issues.
That's
or,
right.
whatever. And so, get an assessment. And I think that's key. Now, you wrote a blog for HomeWord. You've written a couple of blogs for HomeWord. And they're wonderful, by the way. And I know you have blogs on pageklinghampill.com. But you wrote a blog on healthy sexuality. And of course, that is something that I just spoke on it 2 nights ago at a school, a Christian school. And, the people are like, oh my gosh, we didn't see this coming and these were more preteens, but lots of questions, lots of things on, anything from, how do I talk to my kids about this to whatever. But what do you say to a parent whose kid is, at that age, and they maybe didn't ever have their parents talk to them about it, so they don't have any idea what to do, and they come to you for advice. What do you say?
Oh yeah. Well, first I encourage them to continue to find resources, right? Like it's so funny how easily I can talk to other people's kids about this stuff. Like absolutely. I can talk to any person's child about intimacy and sexual relationships, but my own kids, it's almost like I start stuttering and I'm just like, I start sweating. It's a lot to put on yourself, this pressure, right? But there's so many resources out there that I know that can give you the language to speak into that. But I think my big encouragement is you have to have those conversations because they are happening without you if you are not answering these questions. Kids are curious. Our bodies are designed as sexual beings. So they're hearing things on the school bus. They're reading things on Google. We know the average age to see pornography is 8 years old now. So they're already exposed to some of this stuff, even if we're putting filters on our phones, right? And we're avoiding television. It is seeping in because that's the fallen world that we live in. So it is so important that parents have the conversation, even before the age they think it's appropriate, using word appropriate language. I know, Jim, you've written many books about how to talk to your kids about their sexual identity and how to speak to them about those things. But friends, we have to be having these conversations because the world is having them for us.
Right. No, exactly. I mean, the number one place they're going to is the internet. I love the internet. I use it every day, but I don't trust everything that's on the internet. And that's where kids are looking for it. And I say to parents, and I love that you said this about you, sweat, you glow, you don't sweat. But,
Thank you.
Come on.
I will use that.
and I've never heard you stutter. I go like, she's the most articulate person I know. But I get it because it's awkward. And I say to parents, expect it to be awkward. It's not, it's messy. I mean, things are messy, but still they need to be the ones who have those kind of conversations and not lecture preachy, but also back to the dialogue. I always say I would rather have parents talk to their kids with 101-minute conversations than one 100-minute conversation.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think that brings safety to the kids and whatnot. So I love that. Oh my gosh, our time is out. I have loved having a conversation with you. I need to bring you back on. Maybe we could do another podcast here soon. But so good. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for your podcast. And again, I want to say to any of our friends, go to that podcast if you've not done it. I'm meeting people who are like totally, fanning, if that's the right word, fanning Paige and her podcast. And it comes out on Tuesdays, and man, they are on there looking at it just as I am. So go to pageklinghampill.com. You can go to homeword.com. There's also a connection there. You go to any podcast platform known to humankind, it feels like, and you can see this and listen to it. You can also see it, speaking of seeing it, on the HomeWord YouTube channel. And anyway, she just does a great job with that. And Paige, thanks again for hanging out with us as we kind of try to figure out how to work with these crazy teenagers, or actually crazy pre-teenagers too, because
Yes.
that is the same thing going on a lot of times.
It is.
Yeah.
And this was a pleasure, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to be with you. Hey, before we go, I want to make a couple of points. Thinking about, and I'm going to take this out of a book I wrote called Understanding Your Teen. In fact, it's funny, you're not supposed to have favorite children. I don't think I do, but I had times when they were favorites maybe. But this is one of my favorite books I've ever written in my life. And I have 9 points on better communication with your teens, and I'm only going to give you 3 just real quick. And their summary of what we've just had in our conversation with Paige. First of all, listen more, talk less. Okay. We parents, we think we have it all together, and we know more than they do. And we're probably right most of the time, but really, we mentioned it as we were talking, listening is the language of love. And I love this Donald Miller quote, nobody will listen to you unless they sense you like them. And way too many teens don't think you, parents, like them because you have to. You're dealing with discipline. You're dealing with them coloring outside the lines, but make sure that they know that you like them. And that's a biggie. Secondly is make family meal times conversation times. Put the phones away. They are not allowed at the kitchen table. And just literally have those conversations. And sometimes they're going to be amazing, like what Paige was talking about, and other times they're going to be on something that you're not excited about, but nevertheless, as she said, using her term, you're building equity. So make those meal times good. By the way, do the same thing with bedtimes. There were times with my girls, I think when I had some of my best conversations, they would be, getting ready for bed, and I would kind of come in. Sometimes I'd just plop myself down and go, what are you reading, or what are you looking at, or whatever. And all of a sudden they'd tell me about their day, and there were many times they'd come home from school and I'd go, how was your day? Fine. What's going on? Nothing. And then at night, they just would kind of more open up. So make those times sacred. And by the way, don't let them have their cell phones at night. Plug it in someplace else. If they use it for an alarm clock, there's this amazing thing. You can get it on Amazon for like $10. It's called an alarm clock, and it's not the phone. So then they don't have access to their phone. And then the last one is have parent, and I mentioned this about my life, and I love that we were able to do this. Have parent-teen date and hangout times on a regular basis. Now, again, I'm like the hyper focused person on that. And I tried to have a date every week with my kids. So that's like 3 hours. We usually did it around food. That's why I have a rounder stomach than some people, because the food that they wanted was food that I also wanted, but it was like not great food. My wife would take them for salads and I would take them for burgers. But you know what I found? Is those were the good times. So those are just 3 things you can do starting today. What I'm saying here is it takes intentionality, but it's so worth it. Well, again, my thanks to Paige Klingenpill. I love that person. She is amazing. And so don't forget to check out our website for good content. Don't forget to check out her website, pageklingenpill.com, for some wonderful, wonderful content. And thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, we'll see you again.